This will be an overview of the new Wuben G5. I just received this yesterday and thought I'd put together a quick review on video so it would be a little bit easier for people to get a good idea of what this little light has to offer. As you can see here, we have the box. On the back of the box, we have some of the specs for this particular light. It says it can hold 400 lumens is the max output. It can also do about 10 lumens out of the various other colored options. But ultimately, the one thing I noticed that was kind of interesting is that it has an IP68 rating. So we'll try that at the end and see if that holds up. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and take a look at this light. So first of all, I really like just the form factor of this. It's really small. It's very easy to stick in a pocket. It has a nice slim form factor, which is great for sliding into a pocket, especially if you have keys and other things like that. So overall, it's got a nice slim form factor. Of course, this also comes with the downside, meaning that you can't really use any kind of battery. You can't replace the batteries in these. It just comes with the proprietary battery that's in it. Now, that being said, there are a few different ways that you can use it. The first thing that you need to know is you have to unlock it on the side. So you slide to unlock here. And if you slide a little further, that's where you get to the charge port, USB Type-C. But as you use this little switch here, something I've noticed is that when you slide it open, it slides open into the unlocked position very, very easily. I'm not sure that's a great thing. I have noticed that sometimes when I'm using the light that I accidentally slide it off. So I could just imagine this in my pocket sliding on very easily, but fortunately there's not enough output here to really burn a hole in your pocket, so it should be okay. Another point that I've noticed is that this started out very, very stiff. It has loosened up a little bit with use, so that's just part of the game, I guess. I would really like it if it was easier to just be able to adjust with one hand. It can be done with two fingers, but it'd be really cool if I could just really do that without having to use two fingers. But ultimately, it does what it does. Something else that is kind of interesting when you're using it here. So you turn on the light here. This is a little bit tricky sometimes to get the hang of. I've got a bit of practice now, so it's not too bad. But switching between turning it on, off, and then having to change the color or brightness, it basically means you have to move it around in your hand, unless you're doing something like this with a secondary finger or you're going like this. It becomes a little tricky to use because you're essentially having to control it from two different sides, either the side or kind of the front. So that can be a little bit tricky. I feel like that could be, there may be better ways to do that, quite honestly. I don't think that a dial is all that necessary. In all of my Endural lights, it's very easy to be able to ramp up and down just using one button, just by pressing and holding, and then it'll go brighter or dimmer or cycle through colors. So I think that could be done without having to have the gadget factor of rotating this. And besides that, I would also note that as you go through the different colors here, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this on screen here. Maybe I can dim this down a bit. Here we go. So here's the different colors. So we'll go to red. We'll start at red here. When you go to red to orange, it just kind of jumps. It's not very smooth, but the rest are pretty smooth. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, kind of indigo, violet, and then it goes back to red. So I just noticed that as you go from red to orange, there's a jump there. It's not smooth like the rest of the ramp. And that's unfortunate. The same thing happened with the X2 Pro. So I think that's probably something that needs to be worked out a bit before this will really be polished, so to speak. I've also noticed that when you press and hold and you switch to the brightness option here, let me turn it all the way down, you still have to turn quite a bit to ramp it. But even when you do ramp it, something that you may be able to see here, let's dim this down again, is that while I'm rotating, so right now it is on the dimmest. If I rotate even the slightest amount, it jumps up to probably 150 lumens. That is a pretty big ramp. I mean, yeah, let me adjust this a bit more here, just to maybe demo that for you again. So if I bring it all the way down to the dimmest option, so here's the dimmest, and I just do the tiniest bit, just the tiniest bit. The moment it changes, it goes up to 150 lumens, roughly. And then from there, it seems to go a little bit smoother, but you can still see it's going in basically 7 steps from what I can tell. It's not very obvious for the rest of the ramp all the way up, and then it flashes at the highest. But that very first initial part of the ramp is very prominent. It is not smooth, and quite honestly, even at the lowest, I would say this is probably 20 to 30 lumens. I would love to see a moonlight mode where it's, maybe 1 to 2 lumens, maybe even half a lumen. Sometimes that can be kind of nifty to have. I have a number of other lights that go down pretty low like that are quite nice to have. But anyway, that being said, I really do like the fact that I can ramp it up and down. That's something that I miss in a lot of other lights. And even if it isn't super smooth, it's just cool to be able to have that many levels, essentially, roughly about 7 levels, with, maybe if you're really careful, you might be able to get something between a little higher than 7. Maybe you can get 8 out of this. But as far as I've gone through this, it's really not that much more than 7 or 8 steps. But anyway, I like it. It's kind of handy. And what's really neat is that you can just angle it any direction. So with that said, we come to the pocket clip. The pocket clip is great. When I initially looked at it, I hadn't looked in the manual yet. So I was fiddling around with it and I was thinking to myself, this is so dumb. Like, why would you have it on the side? But of course it's adjustable. So you can adjust it so that you are working from pretty much any angle. You could put it on a pocket this way, you could put it on a hat, you could angle things in pretty much any direction that you want using this pocket clip. Now, one critique that I should mention is that while it's very easy to adjust and turn it when it's on a side, I do wish that it was easier to just grab it and grip it right here without having to stick your fingers into that gap as much. If it were just a millimeter maybe wider, so it just stuck out just a little bit more here, it would be great for being able to just grab it here and rotate it. What a lot of people will probably try to do is they'll try to like pull it here, but you can see that there's quite a bit of play here. It's a little bit trickier to do. And yeah, it would just make it so much easier to be able to grab it right at kind of that pivot point. And besides that, I would also say that there'd probably be some benefit in probably a little bit more of an adjustment here so that it doesn't wiggle quite as much. I think that could be improved just a little bit, but that may be intentional just so that it doesn't fall apart as easily. But anyway, I really do like the fact that I can angle that any way that I want. And once it is sideways, it is very easy to grip. You can see there's kind of this gripping texture right here, which lets you grab, pull out, rotate very, very easily. And another thing I should mention is because you can put this either way, and because you can angle this light either direction, this is great for lefties. So I'm left-handed. I love the fact that I can use it left-handed. But then if I want, if I'm working on something, I could also just flip around and use it right-handed. So that's kind of a neat benefit there. But once again, it takes a little bit of getting used to realize that you're going to have to adjust from the side, move it around, and then press the button again to really toggle around. Of course, there's a turbo mode. So double click for turbo. Double click to exit out. Just like the X2 Pro, unfortunately, there is no tactical mode. That seems to be a major oversight to me. Why would you not want to have a tactical mode? I understand that, they have some strobe options here. We can choose the color of kind of a blinking option. And then when it's off, you can also have, kind of a flashing mode, and you can toggle between those as well. So that's great. But I would just love to see kind of a tactical strobe mode for the white light. I think that's a loss. There's no reason why something like that couldn't be added. It really shouldn't take very much and would just add a whole little bit extra utility to a light like this. Now, of course, are you planning to blind people heavily with a tiny light like this? No, but I think it's just nice to have and to know that you could have something like that. And yeah, I think that's just a loss on Wuben's part for not including that as of yet. But perhaps they'll add it. Hopefully they will. Another thing that's kind of neat here is that no matter what mode you're on, if you just press the button here, it'll lock out, immediately toggles it off. Of course, sometimes I've accidentally bumped that because this is just so loose. So that's just something you have to be aware of. It's kind of easy to nudge it and bump it accidentally. Another thing to keep in mind is that if this is open all the way, I'm assuming water is going to get in there. So that gets me a little bit worried. You can also see the 2 points where it kind of grabs as it's sliding. So there's 2 little like holes in there. You can see it. Here's another point where it grabs on those little indentations over there. But anyway, so those are the 3 points that it really grabs on. Now, I'm assuming that when, let's say I'm using this, right, and it's on, if I get this wet, is that pork going to get pretty wet? I think it will, because I don't see any way for this to stay dry, and I'm a little bit worried about that, but hey, I'm a beta tester, so I have to try it out. One other thing I'll mention is there's also a little lanyard attachment spot. There's also a magnetic attachment area here. One thing I would mention is that you would probably want to just try sticking it to something and make sure that when you do stick it on a surface, that if you do it this way, it'll be a little bit easier because it can't fall down as easy. If you stick it this way, it's always going to be a little bit easier for it to just flip down and fall off. Last but not least, we come to the water test. This is supposed to be good. 2 meters underwater for 1 hour. So we'll go ahead, we'll turn it on. I'm making sure that I'm not leaving this any more open than I have to. Keep in mind that you can technically leave it on with the port fully exposed. I'm not going to do that. By the way, if you do have this completely dead and you choose to charge it, it has pass-through charging, which means that you can actually use the light while it's charging from, let's say, a battery backup. So you could technically, while you're out and about, if it does go dead, let's say you're camping or something, you could plug this into a battery backup and have it work immediately. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad they thought of that. Well, anyway, let's get the brightness up here and let's see how this fares with the dunk test. There we go. That is underwater. Looks like the adjustments still work. Can we change colors? Yeah. So yeah, looks like it's working just fine. Completely submerged. So we'll dry that off a little here. Dab it off. Let's see, how did that port survive? Looks like it maybe got almost a little damp in there. I'd probably recommend drying that off fully before using it further. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off, make sure it's dried out properly, because I don't really want to short circuit anything, but looks like it is as advertised. It will survive it at the very least. A bit of a dunk. So anyway, love this little light. Very easy to use. Not perfect. I think this could be a little bit looser. I think some adjustments could be made to the clip as mentioned. I think that this sliding mechanism, lockout mechanism, could be maybe a little stiffer or easier to use. So, you know, there's some things that could be improved, but hey, for a little light that's probably decently inexpensive, I would recommend it. I think it's useful and it has a lot of adaptability for something small like this. Thank you so much.